Lockdown on 5 Live.
The head of Eton College's governing body has attacked government plans to make employers ask job candidates if they attended private schools. Lord Waldegrave of North Hill, who's also a former Conservative cabinet minister, you might remember him as William Waldegrave, says it's wrong to punish children for decisions taken by their parents. He told the Daily Telegraph the policy would mean jobs being filled not on the basis of merit but by social engineering. The plan forms part of the government's Life Chances agenda announced earlier this year, and the Cabinet Office says the plan will be voluntary. So does your background matter when it comes to life chances? Can the type of school you attended really hold you back, or can you get ahead in life regardless? Give me a call now on 0500 909 693. That's 0500 909 693. You can text me on 85058 or get in touch via social media at BBC5Live. Let's speak to Carole Fossey, who's a business owner who's worked in recruitment for more than 20 years, and Lenny Shale, who's an organiser for trade union-backed campaign group Youth Fight for Jobs. Carole, first of all, isn't it a good idea to make employers ask job candidates what school they went to?
No, I think it's a terrible idea. I don't think that should have any bearing one way or the other, and I think that asking and focusing on that area is more likely to cause more problems than the government thinks it might solve.
The government, of course, the problem that it's trying to solve is the lack of social mobility in society. The fact that many people from certain schools, the posh private schools, are more likely to hold the top jobs, certainly in society. And surely a fairer jobs market would take that into consideration. Yeah,
absolutely, I agree, but I don't think that's the way to do it. At the end of the day, perhaps the way to do it is to have application forms with no schools or universities on, just the qualifications that you got, because it really shouldn't matter from where you got your qualifications, and there are more important things to focus on when looking at how you recruit than which school you went to.
But as we know, many of these top schools have a way of getting their pupils through exams, A-levels, perhaps better than schools that are not paid for, and they have a success rate of getting pupils into the likes of Oxford and Cambridge, more so than your Gasworks Road Secondary Modern School. So actually not putting your name on an application form, not putting the school that you attended on an application form, doesn't really solve the problem, doesn't it? It doesn't explain why you didn't go to Oxford and why the other candidate did.
Well, that's a good point, but again, I don't think that the school or the university that you went to should make any difference at all. And I think the issue is much wider than that, and is to do with the quality of education that we're putting out there. I went to a grammar school. I went to the only non-fee paying grammar school in Manchester at that time in the 70s and 80s, and it was a great school. You didn't have to pay to get there, you just had to be bright. And of course, the Labour-controlled Manchester Council shut it down because it was elitist. I never understood that. But that doesn't make any difference. It's the opportunities that need to be there for all. And if private schools are better at getting people to Oxford and Cambridge, then that's the issue that needs to be looked at, not a short-term stopgap of, well, let's just decide to ask everybody which schools they went to.
Lenny Shale, as I say, you're an organiser for trade union-backed campaign group Youth Fight for Jobs. Does Carole have a point? And it's not just Carole, incidentally. One of our listeners, Andy, has already texted in to say, I trained as a teacher in the early 1970s. I was told that I would never make progress because of my Cockney accent. I went on to teach for 40 years in East London and became a head of year, which is all I ever wanted. I had to fight posh voices all my life to get there, but it still underlines the fact that he got there despite what might be seen as his disadvantages in the education system.
Well, I think everyone can fight the injustices of society we have in Britain today. I think, I do agree with a lot with what Carole has said. I think this sort of Tory proposal, while it won't fundamentally change the playing field that exists for ordinary, I'd say, working class people. When you have the top jobs in, say, the politics, the military, civil service, law, journalism, dominated by people who've been to private school, and only 7% of the UK population has gone to private school, it clearly shows something is wrong. And I think fundamentally it really relates to the question of partly to what Carole pointed out, but I would say from a different perspective that we don't have a genuinely equal education system, and rather than looking at what comprehensive schools are doing wrong, I think the fact is those schools, private comprehensive education has had its funds constantly cut back while leaving the field open for private schools to move forward. I'd say get rid of the private schools, get rid of the academies and free schools, and actually have a rationalised education system that's based on what's needed, not what makes profits from private schools. And it's a good, nice idea, but fundamentally won't change that unless we alter how our education is fundamentally run.
Carole, Fossey, get rid of the private schools, get rid of the academies, get rid, I'm supposing Lenny would say, of the grammar schools as well, and just make all schools equitable in that sense. Would that solve the problem?
No, I don't think that would solve the problem because it's not realistic for that to happen. But I think what we should be doing is looking at what it is that we think private schools, if we do think that, private schools do better than ordinary schools, and let's roll that out to all the other schools so that everybody has the same opportunities in life. You know, I did my degree at Hull rather than a Russell Group University, which I was offered. Did it stop me getting a job? No. Did it hinder my career progression? No, not as much as being a woman did, actually. So, you know, there is the other side of that where there are certain professions where it certainly is affecting stuff, but there's a lot of professions where it isn't. So let's just get things in proportion and look at what the real issue is, which is opportunities for all.
As a recruiter, if you're not interested in the schools or maybe even the university that people went to, what are you looking for, Carole?
So what we're looking for, and what we train our clients to do, is to understand what their culture is, what their competencies of their business require from somebody. Because when somebody leaves a job, it's not generally because they can't do the job, it's because they can't do the job there in that environment. So it's looking at what is the culture match of the environment, and how do you get to understand the beliefs and values of the individual and match those two up. That's the key to good recruitment.
So for our listeners, what do you make of this debate? Does your background matter when it comes to your life chances? Can the type of school you attended really hold you back, or is that immaterial? Can you get on your own without, I suppose, the benefits of parental backing or otherwise? Or is it really about who you know? Getting on in life, is it about the old school tie, to bring up that old cliche? 0500 909 693. Give me your thoughts, please. 0500 909 693. And Lenny, I suppose Carole's reluctance with your thesis that we should get rid of all the privileged schools, if you like, and make all schools equitable, I think her reluctance is based on, well, aren't you just dragging things down to the lowest common denominator? Shouldn't there be better schools or more high-profile schools for people who can do better? You know, it's
definitely. I don't think there's anything too good for ordinary working-class people. I want to rise up the education system, not put it down at all. I think proper funding for all schools. So every school, every kid has the opportunity to have a textbook, exercise book each, rather than at the moment where many schools can't even afford that. They have to share out between 2, 3, 4 pupils, while private schools obviously have much more funding. Not at all. I don't want to drive education down. I think it should be raised up, and I think only through doing that, the only way to end the advantages of the elite is to no longer just have an elite, a group of people at the bottom. So I think that's the way to do it. It's not a utopian idea whatsoever. It's about giving proper funding for all pupils, regardless of what school they go to. And the only way to do that is to remove those barriers, remove privatisation, the academisation of schools, and give everyone the same opportunities to pursue whatever career and parts of life they want to.
And Lenny, for you, is it all about education? Is it education that is the defining point in terms of life chances, or are there other things that the government, from your point of view, could or should do to improve people's life chances?
Well, I mean, obviously, education is one part of it. I think our low-wage economy, an economy that's dominated, where money is going upwards rather than being shared out and used for the benefit of needs rather than profit. I think that's it encompasses education as well. And until we remove that sort of society and way of the economy, we're always going to have these problems. That's why I'm a socialist, for instance. I think we have to completely alter and turn upside down the way our economy is run.
Carole, you've been very frank so far, and I'm sure you'll be no less frank on this question. Can talent alone, without parental intervention or support or privilege, can talent alone really take you to the top?
Well, it can, but obviously, there are a lot of obstacles in life, and the less obstacles that you have in your career, then the more likely you are to get on. And that's shown by the figures. 71% of the top military, for example, are all from private schools. 74% of the judiciary are from Oxbridge. So, clearly there is a bias, and this is the real issue. The only time things will equalise is when we get rid of unconscious bias, and unconscious bias is not allowed to rear its head. And that's a much more difficult issue. That's the same issue that we have with women in business and the lack of women in senior management jobs, is because, people hire people like them. So male boards hire more male board members, and old Etonians hire old Etonians. So this is a really much more complex issue than it would appear on the surface, and it's not going to be solved by just asking people whether they went to private school or had preschool meals.
Our guest, Carole Fossey, business owner, works in recruitment for more than 20 years. Lenny Shales with us as well, organiser for the trade union-backed campaign group Youth Fight for Jobs. What are your thoughts on this? 0500 909 693. Pick up the phone and give me a call. Do you feel that your life chances perhaps were curtailed because of the school you went to, or does your background influence your life choices even more so? Let's speak to John in North London first. John, good evening.
Good evening, Doctor.
Tell me, for you, were your life chances enhanced or curtailed because of your background?
I feel they actually were perfectly fine. I went to the same comprehensive school in Rye in East Sussex that Stella McCartney went to. There are a number of other high achievers who've actually also been at that school. Several high-ranking lawyers, one actually tipped for judiciary very shortly. I don't actually see that it makes much difference where you actually go to school. It's actually what you do with what you've been to school with.
Lenny Shell?
Hello? Yeah.
Yeah, Lenny, what would you say to John?
I think there is a point, but the fact is, children, kids who come from a poorer background
I come from a very poor background.
Pardon?
I come from a very poor background.
Yeah, so do I, but I think the fact is, of course, if you come from poor, regardless of what you can fight against certain aspects of the things that are going against you, but the overwhelming majority of people from a poorer background are going to have to, the first thing they're going to have to do once they leave school is work out, how can they feed themselves, find a home. So it isn't just, of course, anyone can break any barriers, but for most people, there are much greater pressures sometimes than just having the luxury and knowing that something's always going to be provided. So the people in private schools are going to have that. People from a poorer background don't have that stability, the luxury of knowing whatever happens, they have somewhere to go at the end of the day. So I don't think it's as simple as that.
Yeah, Carole, what John said a moment ago about going to the same comprehensive school as Stella McCartney, and I'm not singling out Stella McCartney, I don't know anything about her background, I'm not talking about her specifically, but again, to my question to you a moment ago, do you believe that without context in life, because I can imagine, you come up and you say, I'm Paul McCartney's or Sir Paul McCartney's daughter, that might open some doors for you. Do you think that you can get to the top without the context?
Well, Of course you can, because you make your own contact. And yes, it is all about, in life, it is all about who you know, but, you can go and create your own contacts. I've built all my businesses on networking and on, relationships. But it does put you at a disadvantage in certain professions, but not in others, if you've been at private school. But actually, I think sometimes that if you've had to fight harder, then that can be an advantage, because there's nobody there to solve your problems in life except for you. And therefore, some people who have very poor backgrounds, look at Duncan Valentine. He's made his own wealth and his own life, and many, many other people have, because they've had to work that bit harder and fight harder.
Just a final word from you, Lenny. It's not who you know, it's who you are.
Well, the fact is that the government's own Social Mobility and Child Poverty Commission in August 2014 even made the point there's a deeply elitist closed shop at the top. The fact is, the overwhelming aspects of society are against ordinary people. It is often who you know, not what you know, and the only way to change that is to fundamentally rationalise and change our whole education system, and fundamentally the economy with it.
Thanks to both of you. Really appreciate your comments and your thoughts on this. Thanks to Lenny Shale, and thanks also to Carole Fossey. I'll take more of your calls. 0500